Good evening, everybody. I've been quick enough today to actually record it inside Carrow Road. Hopefully, the connection withstands and we don't have any issues. Although this is maybe one of the occasions where you're hoping, or you wouldn't be too upset if the connection did let you down, because that was not enjoyable to watch. It's not going to be enjoyable to pick apart. Norwich City have been beaten here this evening in the Carabao Cup second round by Southampton. They've been beaten by 3-0. And I feel like a lot of the themes that were relevant on Saturday will be relevant again tonight, because there were good bits, there were some very, very bad bits, and a whole host of everything else in between to reflect on. Look, it's still early, and this is the point I'm gonna make. We're still only 5 games into the season, obviously including cup games, 3 in the league. So, of course, it's easy, particularly after a result like tonight, and seeing the goals go in, and the manner of the goals, and the manner of their defending, and the manner of a lot of aspects of their performance, actually, and panic or reach for the destruct button or the panic button. And I just think it's too premature. I think a lot of the things I'm seeing are fixable. A lot of them are. It wouldn't take a whole host to sort out and for Norwich to be a lot more functional. The problem is there's a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of red flags that are appearing a brighter shade of red with every game they play at the moment. And I've seen some of them in probably the opening 3 games of the Championship season, and obviously they were exposed tonight and waving frantically probably by the time the second half ran. So look, there's a lot of context to wrap around this. Clearly, this was a very different Norwich City team. 9 changes, a lot of players who maybe haven't played that many minutes. I think you can see that in Mateusz Kryskorin, and you can see it in Matej Jurasek, you could see it in Oscar Schwartau even, and Liam Gibbs, who hasn't played a minute this season, I don't think. Ben Krezene, who's not played a minute of Championship football. Rory McConville, who's been left out of matchday squads. Jovan Makama, who came on. So there's a lot of context to wrap around that. And equally, they were playing a team who were in the Premier League last season, albeit not very well, and weren't very good by all aspects. But equally, to be at home and again to lose in the manner they did, I think is concerning and is frustrating. And you can understand why fans are feeling the way that they are at this moment in time, and the concern about the start, because this is now 3 straight home defeats at Carrow Road, and that is not acceptable whether you're at the start of the season, middle of the season, or the end of the season. Of course, the run here is 1 win in 9, and that win has come on the last day of last season against already relegated Cardiff. So the home form is concerning. Of course, that spans seasons, and a lot has happened in between. And I think the point I would make is, listening to Liam Manning speak, as I have done, he's under no illusions of the size of the challenge that he's got to turn this around. And the one thing, I guess, if there is comfort at the moment, is that he is a notoriously slow starter at the clubs that he's managed. I think in the first 5 games of last season, Bristol City lost 3-0 twice, I think at Blackburn and Derby, if memory serves. So his teams do take a little bit of time to warm up, and look, it's understandable given the context of what has happened. So all of that, is true, and all of those aspects are true. And I think by, no stretch of the imagination is it time to make reactionary comments and whatnot. But equally, on the flip side of that, there is legitimate reason to be concerned, and that was documented again tonight. So that's a good place to start in terms of where we're gonna take this over the next 10 minutes or so, because there was some good in there as well, and it will get lost now in the aftermath of the result. But there were some good elements, some good patches, some good patterns that Norwich displayed. There was just very few and far between, and probably condensed into one half. And actually, I think you dissect the game, and there wasn't a lot in the first 10 minutes. It was quite scrappy. 2 teams playing free at the back. I think there are spells within games where those formations can cancel each other out, whether you want to have a debate about whether that's a 3 or a 4 or a 5, and we'll come on to that. But it felt like a lot of feeling out and a lot of rustiness and lack of cohesion in the first half, or in the first sort of section of the game. The possession was exchanging. There wasn't too much in the way of clear-cut chances, and both teams were kind of feeling their way in, and that's understandable given the changes on both sides. And then I actually felt Norwich grew into the game and had, probably similarly to Saturday, that spell in the middle of the first half where they constructed chances. Mateusz Kryskorin was played through beautifully by Oscar Schwartau, and just didn't get enough placement or pace on the ball to beat Alex McCarthy. There was a Mirko Topic shot where he won the ball high up the pitch, had a shot and it deflected and hit the bar. There was a Matej Jurasek free kick. There was a Matej Jurasek curling shot from the edge of the box after a really good spell where Norwich had worked from out to in. So, look, I'm not standing here saying this has been a complete disaster, because that's not true. In the first half, Norwich City had the better chances, and they forced Alex McCarthy into better saves, and there were good patterns, there were good spells. Equally, for the second half of the first half, it converted into Norwich City playing a lot of long balls up to Matthias Christgården, which when he's up against Quershi, who I think is 6'6", Nathan Wood, who's not shy of that, Ronnie Edwards as well, you're just not going to win many of those balls. And the one time he did, which was really impressive, got up, sprung really well, and landed awkwardly and hurt his back. So that was not great. And I think at this moment in time, and this is where, again, it's early and you have to wrap around all the context that I spoke about in the first 3 minutes of this. But at the moment, it feels like a lot of last year's issues with probably the removal of the bits that Norwich were good at. There was a lot of mistakes, but they were comfortable on the ball. They had a clear way of playing. You turn up to Carrow Road knowing that, okay, they were going to try and build from the back and build in a certain way. And actually, the attacking profit they got from that was big. It was just the defensive aspects, the pressing, and obviously probably the cultural aspects more widely that were problematic towards the end of the season. And at the moment, it doesn't feel like there's any of those rewards for what they're doing. And again, I probably stand here again, referring to what I said a lot about last season, where Norwich have to work so hard to manufacture a quality chance, and you compare that to what it's taking their opposition, it's very, very little. And that was a theme last season. And, equally, I know there's a lot of chatter and debate about formations and systems. I think it's quite futile, if I'm honest, because there are times where that 3 is a 4, and equally, there were times last year where Norwich built up in a 3 and they were defensively poor. And I think we need to maybe move away from that. And it feels to me a lot of the conversation that people are having are maybe selection points where certain players aren't fitting in certain slots, which, again, maybe more broadly is linked to the system. But equally, we can talk about systems and formations and, base formations, defensive formations. Actually, out of possession, Norwich have been in a 4-4-2 quite a lot. Because of the way they want to go and press and the rewards you get from that system. And actually, I think Liam Manning, and it's very clear, he spoke about this yesterday, he is less about formations and shapes and is it 3 at the back, is it 4? And he's more about how they occupy space and getting players into certain slots. And I think what we've seen in the opening 5 games will evolve. I think we'll see probably another midfield option join the attacking areas when Norwich is doing it. I think we'll see the wing backs become a little bit more understanding of their roles, because at the minute it feels to me like a very, very complex system. And actually you listen to a lot of the messages that he's spoken about, and it has been about simplifying the message, building the culture, etc. And it feels very, very complex what they're trying to do. And again, we can have that conversation, and it's a very legitimate conversation. I can understand why people are having it. I think there's probably more onus on other stuff and other aspects of Norwich's game rather than the shape and the structure and the system. But equally, we can talk about that until the cows come home. If you're going to give your ball away on the edge of your penalty area, you're going to score goals. And you can't do that with regularity and expect not to be punished, particularly by a team that had Southampton's attacking quality. But in truth, for any team in the Championship, and we saw that last year, if you do that with consistency and regularity, you can see goals. And that's what we saw tonight. You look at the opening 2 goals. I don't really think they're system-based. The first one is Matthias Christgården, who takes the ball. Initially, the first one, I'm probably more frustrated with than the second one, because actually it's probably a lack of scanning. I think he gets caught flat-footed. He tries to play a bounce pass and then spin, but actually I think he had time, if he'd have looked up or if he'd have been a bit more on the angle or on the turn, where he could have took that ball and turned out, because the pressure from Southampton's backline wasn't that great. He was in quite a nice pocket of space and probably just didn't realise that, whether that's he didn't quite scan his shoulders or just didn't understand the situation that he was in, and so he tries to bounce it. He then gets it back, and the second one again tries to bounce it, just plays it straight into the path of Stewart onto Archer, who curls it into the top corner of the net. And from there, really, and this I think was probably the story of the evening. Once Norwich City seized that control, they never regained it. And for the ball they had, the possession they had, Southampton were comfortable and they controlled the game without the ball, because Norwich were, it felt like it was kind of side long, and that's fine. And in the second half, it felt probably a more greater vehicle to do that, because they brought on Jovan Makama, who's a very different physical athlete. And there was, of course, some good moments within that. There was a moment where Liam Gibbs stabbed the ball into Makama. He laid it off. Sienat's had a snapshot. There was obviously Jeffrey Schlupp's chance. It was 1-1 at that point, where on the volley from a pretty poor corner, in truth, Alex McCarthy made a great save. So it felt from second goal to full time, it was a really, really poor performance. Norwich lost their way. Southampton, I think, could have got what they wanted. But again, that second goal, we talk about formations and defensive aspects of it. It was a speculative ball into a channel that Ben Cruzene has failed to defend individually, and Rory McConville gets sucked in and all that kind of thing. And Ryan Fraser then has an easy finish. So again, we're talking about probably soft goals and soft defending, and of course you have to have a coherent defensive structure within that. But I think for the opening two goals was purely individual. The third one is an excellent strike. I think Grimshaw can get more on it, but the lads turned away from Kenny McLean, and then he's got essentially the space of Carrow Road really to waltz into and unleash a shot into the top corner, and that's the frustrating point, because again it feels like Norwich are the victims of their own downfall at the moment. And in a way, look, and if you're going to put an uber positive hat on, which I think you could do, and if I was a coach at the moment, if I was Liam Manning, in many ways, the fact it's self-inflicted makes me feel it's more fixable, because those are elements that you can get onto the training pitch and solve and coach. But equally, and this is where there's a not a disjointed nature to it, but this is where the pressure is going to come down the track, because we're game 5 in. If we get to game 10 or game 15 and these issues aren't being resolved, then that's when the pressure is going to come, because Norwich have spent a lot of money on a lot of players, and every decision they've taken since sacking Johannes Torup has been about ensuring that they are geared up to really have success this season and really have a crack this season. And at the moment, of course, and again, with the context is early and teams can develop and grow and move, they will do. And if I'm stood here tonight, I feel Norwich will get better. You've got as well thrown into the mix players at different stages in terms of their fitness. But again, that doesn't, all of that context doesn't excuse the red flags that are very visible at the moment and are there. And Liam Manning, I think, has acknowledged are there. And how they get solved? They get solved through training time, which you don't get a lot of in the Championship. Obviously, Norwich will have recovery day tomorrow. Then you're looking really at Thursday, with Friday probably being a light session and then a travel day to Blackburn. You're looking really at one proper training session on Thursday to try and correct a lot of the stuff that we saw tonight. That's a challenge, I think, and that's a challenge in the Championship more broadly, is that, and why I think teams can get stuck in these kind of runs. So that's an element, and of course, again, individually they just need to develop it, and this is where I think Liam Manning now has to ask himself the question, which a lot of people are asking about structures, which is actually, do you dig your heels in? Do you say, no, this is the way we're going to play, and the players are going to have to adapt and learn to that? Or equally, is it actually then you need to tweak and change it as well? And again, I think there's a little bit of a misconception, because you can play 3 at the backs, 5 at the backs. I don't think it is a 5, by the way, but you can play 3 central defenders and you can be uber aggressive, you can be uber attacking, playing that formation in the same way you can play a 4 and be really negative. So I think we need to move away from this idea slightly that there are formations that are good and formations that are bad, and there's a way of playing that is good and a way of playing that is bad. I can see, and there are times where Norwich do it, and they did it in the first half, where they get ballers into pockets, they ask questions, there's unpredictable moments where it is quite exciting to watch, and it feels like they are going to create something, but then actually substantiating that with something meaningful at the end is the bit that's proving challenging. And those are the aspects that actually connections, relationships, that's where creativity comes from, really, alongside those coaching aspects. And it feels like there's a lot to fix, because at the moment, I'm seeing, again, glimpses. I think there's glimpses of a really good press, and there are signs when it gets wrong or goes wrong. There are signs where it looks like they can combine on the edge of the area, and they get in good areas, and they have kind of good final third entries, and they get a lot of territory without then converting that into something meaningful. So I'm seeing things that are very much fixable and could be fixed very, very quickly. It wouldn't surprise me if they were. But equally, if they don't, and you sensed it tonight, and it's understandable, because there were 17,000 people in here for a Carabao Cup game, and a lot of them would have been at the Middlesbrough game, the Mill game, where they watched their team kind of gift-wrapped goals to the opponent, and that was the case tonight as well. And again, if Norwich can prevent that, and it's been a running factor and running feature of Norwich teams for a long period of time now, and really, I said this the other day, but I can't really remember. So I was born in 2000. I can't really remember too many defensively robust, solid Norwich teams in my time. There's the Worthington title-winning side. Farke's second promotion winning side from the Championship, obviously in COVID times, that were really solid defensively. Beyond that, I'm struggling really, and we're just not seeing it at the moment, and we're not seeing the rewards of this system for the effort that they are putting into it. So what we need is evidence, probably, and whether that will come on Saturday or otherwise, that actually what they are doing is fixing some of these problems and problem solving along the way. And that's, to be honest, what I liked a little bit about Saturday. We saw it probably in Norwich's best spell again in that first half, which I think was almost copy and paste to what we saw tonight. After what was a pretty slow start and a pretty poor start in possession, they fixed it. They went and pressed a bit higher. They changed their shape slightly. They were more aggressive. There was more intent about them. Tonight, there just wasn't those problem-solving capabilities. And that is, I think, the real frustration. And particularly tonight, when you're looking at players to put their hand up and to stake a claim for Liam Manning's championship thoughts, I'm not really sure anyone did that, to be honest. Yeah, maybe there were some flashes from Jurasek that was positive. I thought Chris Gorin as well is going to be a nuisance to play against, but again, I think there were elements to it that with him, he's small, he's ferocious, he's all in, all action, and the way he plays at times, you just want to say, you're a little bit like Marcelino Nunez, really. There's a lot of effort and a lot of application, a lot of charging in, but actually there are points where you just want to hold him back a little bit and time that, and that's really good for pressing and being aggressive, but equally if it's done in the wrong way, it can structurally cause problems. And I thought Southampton were really savvy tonight at working Norwich out and with their press and transitionally as well. I mean, you look at the goals they scored tonight, it was 1-2 passes and playing quickly and playing with purpose and intent, and it wasn't about really keeping the ball and having possession. They were happy to let Norwich have it, but they were always in control of where Norwich had it and the type of way they played, barring that spell in the first half where they looked poor, I felt, in possession, and Norwich were able to turn the ball over. Thereafter, it became about, and this has been the story, I don't think Norwich have penned back their opponents enough for long enough and got enough reward for doing that in terms of chances and chance creation. So look, there's a lot to fix. Liam Manning knows that. And I think everyone knows that if it doesn't start to be fixed very quickly, then all that is going to add is more layers of concern and more frustration. But 5 games in, and it is just 5 games in, 2 of those cup games, free league, there's a long way to go. There's a lot of time for them to fix it. They've got an international break coming up as well to do just that, albeit with some players jetting off here, there and everywhere, and time to take stock as well. But I think it's quite clear at this stage that this isn't necessarily going to be a quick fix. But I think just for the fan base more than anything, it needs to start at least showing some positive signs at this stage. And if that isn't the case by the next time they come to Carrow Road and play Wrexham here, obviously they've got Blackburn and international break and Coventry in that period, then actually a few of the grumbles might become a little bit louder. And that's not noise that anybody needs at this moment. They need that progress, those results to almost build that time and build that trust, which at the moment feels like it's kind of wavering a little bit. Again, to reiterate, I think it's far too early to make any huge, widespread judgments on the coach, on the way that they're playing, on systems or styles or structures. That said, it doesn't excuse the red flags and the work there is to do. So that's where I am tonight on it. I'm sure there'll be lots of different views on kind of everything that I've said over the last 18 minutes and whatnot. And the reality is none of us have a crystal ball. But I think the point that and I can only speak for me, the point that I really will get concerned if by game 10, if by game 15 we're still here, we're still seeing Norwich concede the same type of goals and the same issues are prevalent. That is for me when I will start to not hit the panic button, but definitely there'll be a bit more concern about where they are. And ultimately, because of the activity they've done, the money they've spent, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect Norwich City to be a little bit further ahead of where it feels like they are at this moment in time. Pinken.com, the place to go. I've got a really good offer at the moment if you want to subscribe. 1 year for £18, you can get access to all of our exclusive coverage over at Pinken.com, where every game, we cover every press conference. We ask Liam Manning the questions that matter. So, check that out, Pinken.com/subscribe. Really appreciate it supporting us as well, which is really important. So, I hope and think it is as well. Thank you very much for watching. We'll, of course, be back on Saturday. Thankfully, it's a nice short trip to Blackburn. And hopefully we're talking about a better performance and a better result. Thank you very much for watching. Good night, everyone.